Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Last summer, 21-year-old Elliot Johnson took his own life. In one of the letters he'd left, he said he had been bullied and betrayed, and he singled out a man called Mark Clarke, the man running the Conservative Road Trip 2015, a kind of roving election campaign effort. Elliot's death prompted questions to be asked of the Conservative Party. Had it responded to complaints? Should it have known that Mark Clarke was a bully? Well, Mr Clarke has always denied the accusations, but today came the results of the official Conservative Party inquiry. From the law firm Clifford Chance, it identified 13 alleged victims of bullying and inappropriate behaviour, as well as 6 sexual allegations. Yes, the party's top managers did know that Mr Clarke had a questionable history. But on the specific issue of whether the 2 chairmen of the party knew last year of bullying of activists, well, it clears them. James Clayton has been reporting on this story since last summer.
If anyone expected the law firm Clifford Chance's report into allegations of bullying, harassment and inappropriate behaviour would lay the blame at senior party figures, they would have been sorely disappointed. On the face of it, the report cleared both the men responsible for running the party at the time. Its verdict on Lord Feldman, party chairman until last month, was that there was no evidence that Mr Feldman was aware of allegations of bullying or harassment of young activists by Mr Clarke or those associated with him prior to the 14th of August 2015 complaint. That was the complaint made by Elliot Johnson, and the same assessment was given to Grant Shapps. This is despite 12 other individuals who complained of bullying or inappropriate behaviour by Clarke in the previous 20 months. It's led some to call the report a whitewash, but a closer look at the report reveals a striking number of warnings that were missed or ignored by the Conservative Party hierarchy. In 2014, when Clarke was being considered for a role back at CCHQ, Grant Shapps examined his candidate's file when he ran as a parliamentary candidate in Tooting. The findings published today show that candidate's report included reports of aggressive and bullying conduct towards his campaign director. The report also says that the then campaign director, Lord Gilbert, recalled raising issues related to Mr Clarke's conduct before the 2010 general election with Mr Shapps and Mr Abbott in 2014. Paul Abbott was Grant Shapps' chief of staff. In 2014, before Clarke was hired, he was told by a member of the CCHQ press office that Mr Clarke was dangerous to have around because he wasn't to be trusted. The report also says that Mr Abbott sent Mr Clarke an email about a Conservative future election, describing the returning officer for the election, Mr Phillips, as someone who Mr Abbott had to remain friendly with to crush complaints against Mr Clarke. The attitude of senior party figures to Clarke was succinctly summed up in one email from Shapps to Tory election guru Sir Linton Crosby. Sir Linton had contacted Shapps over concerns about Clarke raised by the party's press office. Shapps replied, explaining that he was aware of Clarke's reputation, but employing him was a calculated risk. Although the inquiry found that Lord Feldman had not been aware of any allegations of Clarke bullying activists before 2015, the report intriguingly reveals that following Elliot Johnson's complaint, he wrote in an internal correspondence that he had always had the gravest possible reservations about Clarke. When asked to clarify his comments by Clifford Chance, he said he was referring to his competence as a campaign organiser. On one specific allegation broadcast by Newsnight last December, the report said it found no evidence to corroborate the claim that Lord Feldman had been handed a dossier about Clarke's behaviour by the then Tory youth leader, now an MP, Ben Howlett, as far back as 2011. The inquiry found that the MP had met with Feldman and handed him a set of papers which mentioned Clarke, but that Howlett and Feldman had only discussed political concerns about Clarke and other young activists. Despite the report's exoneration of senior figures, it's left many wondering how so many complaints could have been made to the Conservative Party about Clarke, from misconduct to bullying to sexually inappropriate behaviour, all of which he denies, without any responsibility taken by those who ran the party.
James Clayton. Now, at the centre of it all, Mark Clarke. His solicitors told Clifford Chance that the allegations made against Mr Clarke are wholly untrue and unsubstantiated. Many are based on totally fabricated media reports. Mr Clarke said he's been cooperating with the police and won't respond to allegations, while the police investigation into Elliot Johnson's death is ongoing. Earlier, I spoke to Elliot Johnson's father, Ray Johnson, who received a summary of the report today. So what did he make of it?
We received an additional letter from Patrick McLaughlin with the summary. He says that the report states that the Conservative Party acted entirely properly. However, in the very next sentence, they go on to say that they're making changes to the way that their volunteer leaders operate. It's a code of conduct, and also making changes to their complaints procedure. So what is it? Have they acted entirely properly, or have they noticed failures in their systems?
But it is interesting that it does imply, or does report, that clearly the senior figures in the party, when they started the road trip which your own son was involved in, they knew that this chap, Mark Clarke, had, let's call it, an interesting history, that he came with quite a lot of baggage.
Yes, as I remember, Grant Shapps said that Mark Clarke came with a checkered history. So they were fully aware of Mark Clarke's past history, and they were prepared to take a risk. They were prepared to take a gamble.
Clifford Chance's inquiry report tells us that a phrase was used by Grant Shapps that this is a calculated risk using this guy. He's a good campaigner, but obviously there's this other history.
Well, clearly it was a risk too far. They knew his past record. You cannot take a calculated risk with a person like that when you're dealing with young people.
A lot of people would say you should have been talking to the inquiry, but you were very reluctant. You didn't want to have really anything to do with it, did you? Why was that?
Well, we saw it as a whitewash from the start. This is an inquiry that was run by the Conservative Party. They set the terms of reference. They chose the solicitors, who happened to be their own solicitors, not independent, and they were paying for it. How could it possibly be independent? Our view was that they simply wanted to use us as some kind of, I don't know, cover, you might say, some kind of gloss over the inquiry. We weren't prepared to be used as a tool in that way.
You've obviously got quite a lot of anger at the Conservative Party and the way they dealt with your son. Would you at least concede that, looking back on it, you know, as the coroner found in the inquest earlier this year, his tragic death was a more complicated tragedy than simply the bullying by Mark Clarke? The coroner said he believed himself to have failed with money, with politics, with his parents, and failed in life.
Well, we've had our own psychologist report conducted, and the psychologist has said that people put under that kind of extreme pressure, youngsters put under that kind of extreme pressure, do react in those ways. They make claims that they have failed in life, they failed with money. And in fact, they're lost. They're losing track of the reality of their lives, and I think Elliot was no different from anybody else.
It was nothing to do with him being gay or finding that difficult or any other that history, no?
Nothing to do with it at all. No, Elliot was quite openly gay. He was being badly bullied, badly treated by people within the Conservative Party, and his employer responded by actually making things worse.
Ray Johnson, I know it's been a very difficult year for you. Thank you so much for talking to us. Thanks.
Thank you.
I've been